The room was cold and dark, filled with the smell of rust and wet stone. She lay on the floor, curled tightly, her small arms wrapped around her thin legs. Her skin was pale blue, marked with bruises, cuts, and burns. Her long white hair was tangled, sticking to her cheeks from dried tears. They called her Subject 9, but she didn't know her real name anymore. For 16 nights, she had known only pain. She ate stale crumbs thrown at her like trash, drank dirty water from a cracked bowl, and slept on sharp stone. Each time the guards came, she closed her eyes and waited, hoping they'd forget her, but they never did. Sometimes they kicked her for fun, sometimes they just laughed. Still alive, little failure, one of them asked on the 10th night, dropping her food near a puddle. She didn't answer. She hadn't spoken in many days, not since they took her voice away with fear. Her body ached, her heart felt empty, but her spirit had not died, not completely. Something inside her still waited, still hoped, even if she didn't understand why. On the 16th night, everything changed. There was a noise, a loud bang, the sound of a heavy door opening. She opened one eye slowly, too weak to move her head. 2 guards dragged someone in, someone tall and heavy. It was a human. He was thrown to the other corner of the cell, his hands cuffed in glowing chains. His clothes were torn, his face was bruised, but his eyes were awake, burning like fire. The guards spat on him, then laughed and walked away, sealing the door behind them. Silence returned, cold and sharp. The girl didn't move, didn't speak. She just watched from her corner like a frightened animal. The human shifted, groaned, then looked around. His eyes met hers. For a moment, they just stared at each other in silence. He didn't speak right away, didn't laugh or cry. Then, with a soft voice, he said, "Aid, hey, you okay over there?" She flinched, surprised. No one had spoken kindly to her in so long. He waited, but she said nothing. He leaned back slowly, wincing in pain, and said, "Didn't think I'd have company down here." His voice was rough but warm, like a fire burning in the cold. For the first time in days, something moved inside her chest, a strange feeling, small but strong. Like the first light before sunrise, she tried to speak, but her throat was dry, her voice lost. So she just looked at him, eyes wide, lips parted, heart pounding. The human didn't push her. He just closed his eyes and whispered, "Guess we're both stuck here, huh?" Then he laughed softly, not a cruel laugh, but a tired one. That night, she didn't cry in her sleep. She lay still, staring at the human across the room. His breathing was slow and steady, like music in the silence. She felt something strange, safe maybe, or not alone. But just as her eyes were starting to close, an alarm rang loudly. Red lights flashed, and boots slammed on the metal floor outside. The guards were coming back. And this time, they were not alone. She felt fear again, but also something else, curiosity. Who was this human? And why did her heart beat faster when he looked at her? The chains around her wrists felt a little lighter that night, and for the first time in 16 nights, she didn't feel completely broken. The human sat in the far corner, chained by the arms and ankles. His back leaned against the cold wall, his head low, breathing slow but strong. His name was Reese, but no one in this prison cared. To them, he was just another invader, caught during a failed escape. But to the girl watching from her dark corner, he was something else. He didn't cry, didn't beg, and when the guards came, he looked them in the eyes. The next day they returned, with whips and metal rods. They beat him without warning, laughing as they struck his ribs and shoulders. Blood stained his shirt, but he made no sound. The girl flinched with every strike, her thin fingers gripping the stone floor. When it was over, the guards tossed him food like trash, and left with grins. He lay there for hours, unmoving, barely breathing. The girl slowly crawled closer, inch by inch, her body shaking. She had never seen anyone defy the guards like that, not without screaming. "Why?" she whispered, without realizing, her voice cracking like ice. The human's eyes opened slowly, blood trickling down his cheek. "You talked," he said softly, like it was the most amazing thing. She looked away, ashamed, afraid, but he smiled, even in pain. "That's good," he whispered. "You're still in there." She stared at him, confused, her lips trembling. "In where?" she asked, voice barely a breath. "In your mind," he said, eyes closing again. "They haven't taken it." Those words echoed in her chest, strange and warm. That night, she didn't sleep in the far corner. She crawled closer, still afraid, but her legs didn't stop. She reached the middle of the cell, then stopped, not daring to go farther. The human noticed her, but said nothing, just nodded slowly. "I'm Reese," he said after a while. "What's your name?" The girl shook her head. "They don't let me have one." "Then I'll call you something, H." He replied, thinking hard. He looked at her small frame, her shining silver eyes, her quiet bravery. "How about Leary?" She blinked, confused. "What does it mean?" "Hope," he whispered. "Back on Earth." She didn't answer, but her lips curled slightly, almost a smile. Reese leaned back, wincing from his wounds. "You don't belong here, Leary." She looked down, hugging her knees. "I don't belong anywhere." He shook his head gently. "You belong to yourself." No one had ever said that to her, not even once. That night, the air in the cell felt different. Not warm, but less cold, less empty. Leary curled up near the wall, facing him, eyes wide open in the dark. She watched him sleep, his chest rising and falling slowly. For the first time, she didn't dream of pain. But peace didn't last. On the morning of the 17th day, the warden entered, a tall alien with gold armor and 4 glowing eyes. He pointed at Reese. "Bring the human," he barked. 2 guards stormed in and grabbed him roughly. Reese tried to stand, but his legs gave out. Leary rushed forward. "No!" The guards froze, shocked. She had spoken loudly for the first time. The warden stepped toward her, curious. "You care for this human?" Leary said nothing, but her eyes burned with fear and anger. The warden laughed cruelly. "Interesting." Then he nodded, and the guards dragged Reese away. His eyes locked on hers as the door slammed shut. She was alone again, but this time, she didn't feel weak. This time her hands curled into fists. This time, she was ready to fight. Leary sat alone in the dark cell, her heart racing like thunder. The cold stone floor no longer felt like home. It felt like a cage again. She stared at the spot where Reese had been, his warmth already fading from the air. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from something new. Anger. He was the only one who had ever spoken to her with kindness. Now he was gone, dragged away like he was nothing. Leary stood slowly, her legs weak, but her will strong. She looked around the cell, her eyes sharp, thinking, feeling, remembering. She pressed her ear to the wall, listening for movement, but heard only silence. She waited, minutes, hours, maybe more, until the door opened again. 2 guards entered, holding Reese between them. He was barely conscious, blood dripping from his mouth. They dropped him like garbage onto the floor, then left without a word. Leary rushed to him, falling to her knees beside his broken body. "Reese," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Can you hear me?" He groaned softly, one eye blinking open. "I didn't think I'd see you again," he said, lips cracked. "You came back," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "You waited," he replied, smiling even through pain. Leary looked at him closely, his face swollen, arms bruised, but his chest still rose and fell. She didn't know what to do, but her body moved on its own. She tried to lift him, struggled, slipped, but refused to give up. Finally, she dragged him to the corner of the cell, to the softest part of the floor, the place she once claimed for herself. Now, she gave it to him. He winced, but didn't fight, letting her help. She lay down beside him, wrapping her arms around his chest like a blanket. He gasped quietly, surprised. "Leary, what are you doing?" "You gave me warmth once," she said. "Now I give it back." The stone floor was still cold, but his body was warm, even weak as he was. Her head rested against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. For 16 nights she had known only pain, but now in the silence she felt something new, comfort. Reese's arm, heavy and slow, moved around her shoulders. He held her gently, like she was something precious. No one had ever touched her like that before, not to hurt, but to care. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth sink into her bones. His breathing slowed, and so did hers. The cell faded away, the walls, the chains, the guards, all forgotten. All that existed was the warmth between them. Reese whispered a word she didn't understand, something from his home. "What does that mean?" she asked softly, not opening her eyes. "It means peace," he said, his voice a sigh. "Real peace." She didn't answer, but her hand found his, fingers wrapping around his tightly. In that cold prison, the two broken souls became one warmth. But beyond the walls, danger still waited. The warden watched from a camera screen, silent and curious. "They bond like mates," he muttered. "Strange." Another voice replied, "Should we separate them?" The warden narrowed his eyes. "No, not yet. I want to see what happens when you give a dying flame a little wind." Back in the cell, Leary smiled in her sleep, the first smile of her life. And Reese, even half broken, held her like she mattered. For once, the night was not cruel. It was kind, and though the storm was coming, they had found something worth fighting for. The guards watched the footage in silence. Leary, once quiet, broken, and ignored, now curled beside the human like a child in a parent's arms. She no longer cried at night, no longer lay on the stone floor shaking. The human had changed her, and that made her dangerous. The warden stood with his arms crossed, his golden armor shining in the control room lights. "Look at her eyes," he said coldly. "They were dull before, now they glow faintly." "She's stabilizing," said one of the scientists, nervous. "The human's presence is doing something strange." "Too strange," the warden growled. "That creature was meant to die slowly, not grow stronger." Another guard stepped forward. "Should we eliminate the human, sir?" The warden paused, thinking. "No, not yet." He smirked. "Let's test how deep this bond goes." Later that day, the door to their cell slammed open. Reese and Leary both sat up fast, eyes wide. 4 guards entered, armed and angry. Without a word, they grabbed Reese by the arms, pulling him away. Leary jumped to her feet, shouting, "No, stop!" One of the guards backhanded her, and she hit the wall hard. Blood trickled from her lip, but she didn't cry. She pushed herself up and screamed again, louder this time. Reese shouted too, fighting back, but he was weak. They hit him with an electric prod, and he fell unconscious. Leary crawled forward, grabbing his hand as they dragged him. "Don't take him," she begged, voice broken. "Please, please, he's all I have." But the guards didn't listen. The door slammed shut behind them, leaving her alone. Hours passed, maybe more. Leary sat in the corner where he used to lie, holding nothing, feeling hollow. She rocked back and forth, whispering his name over and over. In another part of the prison, Reese was chained to a chair in a white room. Bright lights above burned his eyes, and cold metal pressed. Against his skin, a tall alien in a clean coat stepped forward, holding a scanner. "You've caused a problem," the alien said without emotion. "The girl was not meant to connect." Reese looked up weakly. "She's not a tool. She's alive." The alien tilted his head, confused. "You protect her." Reese smiled, blood on his teeth. "Yeah, and I'd do it again." The alien raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "She is broken." Reese stared at him, his voice steady. "So was I." Back in the cell, Leary didn't sleep. She felt something in her chest. Pressure, heat, something alive. Her fingers clenched the floor as her mind buzzed with strange thoughts. Her ears picked up distant sounds, metal boots, low voices, echoes of pain. And then, something sharp stabbed through her head. A scream that wasn't hers. It was Reese. She didn't know how, but she felt it. His pain, his fear, his anger. Her eyes opened wide, glowing faintly in the dark. She stood up, weak legs trembling but firm. She walked to the center of the room, raised her hand, and whispered, "No more." The chains on her ankles sparked suddenly, then shattered. She looked at the broken pieces, surprised but not afraid. Somewhere deep inside her, something was waking up, and it was angry. She turned to the door, eyes burning with purpose. They had taken her warmth, her only comfort, her only human. Now she would take him back. The chains on her ankles lay broken on the floor. Leary stared at them, her chest rising and falling fast. Her heart pounded like a war drum, but her hands were steady. She had no plan, no weapon, no guide. But she had something stronger now. Purpose. She moved to the cell door and placed her hand on the cold metal. It felt like ice, like every night she had spent curled against the wall. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I'm not afraid anymore." A spark of light pulsed from her fingers. The door creaked, glowed red, then slid open with a loud hiss. For a moment, Leary stood still, shocked. She didn't know how she did it, but something inside her had changed. She stepped into the hallway, her bare feet silent on the cold floor. The corridor was dim, filled with shadows and echoing clicks. Surveillance drones floated above, searching, humming, blind to her now. She moved like a shadow, quick and low. Every twist and turn of the hallway came back to her, like her body remembered a map it had never seen. She passed cages filled with other hybrids, most asleep, some staring at her with wide eyes. They didn't cry out, they didn't move. They just watched, like they knew she was different. One whispered as she passed, "You are the one, the spark." Leary didn't understand, but she kept moving. Then she heard it, a scream, low and broken. Reese, her blood turned hot, her feet faster. She followed the sound, turning corners, ducking under cameras, pressing herself into vents when guards passed. Finally, she found the room, a thick steel door with a glowing red panel. She stepped up and touched it. The panel flashed, trying to scan her. She closed her eyes, reached deep inside herself, and thought only one thing. Open. The door clicked, groaned, and opened. Inside, Reese hung by his wrists, blood running down his arms. One of the scientists stood with a scanner in hand, startled by the opening door. "What? How did you?" Leary didn't wait. She raised her hand and a wave of force slammed the alien into the wall. The scanner shattered. Lights flickered. Sparks rained from the ceiling. She rushed to Reese. His head drooped, eyes barely open. "It's me," she whispered. "I came." He smiled, even now, didn't doubt it. She touched the cuffs and they fell off like paper. He collapsed into her arms, heavy but alive. She held him tightly, her face buried in his shoulder. "I won't let them take you again," she whispered. Alarms began to wail across the facility. She helped him stand, his arm around her shoulder. "Can you walk?" "Not well," he muttered, "but I'll try." Together they limped out of the lab, sparks flying, sirens screaming. The whole place was waking up, but so was she. Her powers flared brighter now, her steps confident. Doors opened before her, lights bent away from her path. They made it to the lower tunnel, a waste chute for broken machines. "Down there," Reese said, pointing to the drop. "It leads outside." She looked down into the darkness, then at him. "Hold tight," she whispered, wrapping both arms around him. They jumped. They fell into blackness, wind rushing, metal clanging around them. Then, crash. They landed hard in a pile of wet trash and broken parts. But they were out. Above them, red lights blinked, but no one followed yet. The snow outside was near, the stars above waiting. They were free, for now, and Leary was not the same girl in chains anymore. Snow fell softly from the sky as the chute door cracked open with a loud groan. A cold wind rushed in, biting at their skin like tiny knives. Leary peeked out first, her eyes wide as she saw the world beyond. White hills stretched for miles, broken only by black rocks and frozen trees. She had never seen snow before, never felt cold that was clean, not like the damp chill of prison stone. Behind her, Reese lay still, breathing hard, his face pale from pain and cold. She turned to him quickly, brushing ice from his hair. "We made it," she whispered, voice shaking. "We're outside." Reese gave a weak smile. "You got me out. Guess I owe you a warm fire." Leary helped him sit up, then pulled his arm over her shoulders. She stood carefully, her legs sinking into the soft snow. The cold stung her feet, but she didn't stop. Somewhere out here, there had to be shelter. They moved slowly, step by step, the wind pushing against them like a wall. Above, the sky was gray, and no sun could be seen. It was a dead world. But at least it was free. Leary kept scanning the land ahead, her eyes sharper than ever. Then she saw it, a shape in the distance, half buried in snow. An old wreck, broken and black, its metal twisted but strong. "Over there," she pointed. "A ship, maybe a pod." Reese didn't answer, but he leaned on her harder, trusting her completely. They reached the wreck after what felt like hours. Its doors were open, the inside dark and cold, but it was shelter. Leary helped him inside, lowered him gently to the metal floor. Then she began searching, hands moving fast, eyes focused. She found a power node buried under wires, flickering weakly. She touched it, and it blinked to life, giving off a faint blue light. Warmth spread slowly through the pod, not much, but enough to breathe without pain. Reese groaned and looked at her. "You did it again," she turned. Ned to him, wiping frost from her cheeks. "You need rest." He coughed, then smiled. "Only if you stay close." Leary didn't hesitate. She lay beside him, pulling his coat over both of them, his arms wrapped around her without a word. The cold still reached them, but his heartbeat warmed her more than fire. "I don't understand what's happening to me," she whispered. "My hands, the lights, the power." Reese looked into her eyes. "It's you waking up, the real you." "But I was made to be broken," she said softly. "I wasn't supposed to live." Reese shook his head gently. "That's what they wanted you to believe." She pressed her forehead against his chest, closing her eyes. "I was afraid, all the time. But now, I only feel afraid of losing you." He kissed the top of her head. "Then we stay alive, together." Outside, snow piled high around the wreck, hiding them from drones and eyes in the sky. But the silence didn't last. Far away, something red blinked in the dark. A scanner drone catching a trace of heat. The hunt had already begun. But inside the broken pod, two survivors held each other, refusing to be broken again. Leary's power pulsed gently under her skin, and this time, she was ready to use it. Not to survive, but to protect. Snow crunched under sharp metal feet. High above the frozen hills, a red-eyed drone hovered silently. It scanned the land, its sensors catching heat waves too soft for animals. It paused, then sent a signal to the mothership orbiting above. The message was simple. Target located. Deep inside the wrecked pod, Leary felt a sudden chill, not from the wind, but from something inside her. She sat up quickly, her breath forming clouds in the air. Reese stirred beside her, coughing quietly. "What is it?" he asked, his voice rough. "They found us," she whispered, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Reese tried to sit up, pain flashing through his ribs. "How close?" "Too close," she replied, already pulling him to his feet. She helped him outside, into the bitter cold. The pod behind them hummed and sparked. It wouldn't last long. They had to move, and fast. Leary's eyes scanned the white hills, her breath sharp. Then she saw them, small at first, 3 shadows moving through the snow. Not guards this time, but hunters. These ones didn't wear armor. They were armor, their bodies made of bone and machine. They moved without sound, without mercy. Reese leaned close. "You go. I'll slow them down." She turned to him fast, anger flashing in her voice. "No, you can't carry me forever," he said gently. "They want you, not me." "You are the reason I'm alive," she whispered. "I'm not leaving you." Reese opened his mouth to argue but stopped. He saw the fire in her eyes, bright and wild. The girl who once trembled in a corner was gone. He nodded slowly. "Then we fight together." Leary helped him down into a dry stream bed, its edges sharp with frozen rock. She placed him behind a ridge and kissed his forehead. "Stay here," she said softly. "If I fall, run." Reese grabbed her hand. "You're not going to fall." She turned away before he could see the fear. In her eyes, she walked into the open snow, her hands glowing faint blue. The hunters saw her, paused, then spread out, moving like wolves. They hissed in a language she didn't understand, but their blades spoke clearly. They charged, fast and silent. Leary closed her eyes, focused, and raised her palms. A wave of energy burst from her chest, pushing snow into the air. The first hunter was thrown back, crashing into a tree with a sharp crack. The second slashed at her with a metal claw, but she ducked and sent a spark into its chest. It screamed, a sharp sound like broken glass. The third pinned her down, its claw around her throat. She gasped, fingers shaking, eyes wide. Then, Reese's voice from behind the ridge. "Leary, don't let them win." Her eyes flared bright, her hand grabbing the hunter's wrist. With a scream, she sent a burst of light into its arm, melting it from the inside. It fell back, howling, its armor smoking. She stood, shaking, her legs weak but firm. The hunters crawled back, broken but not dead. They looked at her with something new. Fear. One hissed, "She has awakened." Then they vanished into the trees, retreating. Leary collapsed to her knees, breathing hard. Reese rushed to her, ignoring his pain. He caught her just as she fell, holding her tightly. "You did it," he said, voice full of awe. "You scared them off." She looked up at him, tears in her eyes. "I didn't want to kill. I just wanted to protect." "And you did," he whispered. "You're stronger than they ever guessed." Above them, clouds swirled, and far away, more ships began to move. The hunt was far from over. But now, they knew she could fight, and she was just getting started. The forest was quiet now, but Leary knew it was only for a short time. The hunters were not gone. They were regrouping, watching, waiting. She sat beside Reese under a frozen tree, her arms wrapped around her knees. Her hands still glowed faintly, the warmth under her skin pulsing like a second heartbeat. Reese sat close, his face pale from pain but calm. "They're afraid of you," he said, brushing snow from her shoulder. "They should be." Leary shook her head. "I didn't want them to be afraid. I just wanted them to stop." Reese looked at her carefully. "Then next time maybe you don't have to run." She turned to him slowly. "Next time?" "You're not weak anymore," he whispered. "You can choose what comes next." Before she could answer, a sharp sound echoed through the trees. A voice, low and mechanical, spoke from a small floating speaker above. "Leary, you are ordered to return." Leary stood up slowly, her heart thudding. A large figure stepped out from the mist, taller than any she had seen before. It was not a hunter. It was him, the one who made her, the one who called himself Father. His skin was like silver, his eyes 4 glowing slits. He did not smile. He did not raise his voice. "Return now," he said, "or the human dies." Behind him, 2 drones dragged Reese to his knees, holding a weapon to his back. Leary froze, her breath caught in her throat. "No," she whispered. "Don't hurt him." Her creator stepped forward. "You were made to obey." "I was made to die," she said back, her voice shaking. "But I didn't." The weapon hummed louder, aimed at Reese's spine. "Return to your place," the voice repeated, "or this one ends now." Reese looked at her, blood on his lips, and smiled weakly. "Don't come back for me," he said. "I'm not worth losing yourself." Tears filled Leary's eyes, her hands glowing again, her fingers clenched tightly, her legs. Trembling, she took a step forward, then stopped. She looked at her creator, at the machines, and then at Reese. And in that moment, she made her choice. She raised both hands, her eyes burning white-blue. "No more cages," she whispered. "No more fear." A wave of energy exploded from her body. The drones shook, sparked, and shattered like glass. Reese fell forward, free, gasping. The tall figure stepped back, his face still cold but surprised. "You defy your blood," he said slowly. "You were never meant to rise." Leary stepped forward, her voice stronger now. "Maybe not, but I choose to." She raised her hand again, and the ground under her former master cracked. He disappeared in a flash of light, teleporting away, but not in triumph. In fear, the snow fell harder, the forest quiet again. Reese crawled to her, holding her arms. "You did it." She dropped to her knees, exhausted, her power flickering. "I didn't want to choose between you and peace," she said, "but I realized, you are my peace." He held her close, both of them breathing heavy. The sky above lit with stars, but none brighter than the girl in his arms. Leary had made her choice. She would never go back. She would never bow. She was free, because she chose to be. The forest slowly faded behind them as Leary and Reese walked side by side. The snow grew lighter, the wind softer, and the silence more peaceful than before. Reese leaned on her shoulder, still weak but alive. Leary's steps were steady, her eyes scanning the land ahead. They had no map, no path, no plan, but they had each other, and that was enough. After many hours, they saw something in the distance, a black shape buried in snow, old but strong, half hidden by frozen trees. As they got closer, they saw what it was. A forgotten outpost. It stood low to the ground, metal walls rusted, antenna broken. But it was shelter, and it was theirs. Leary reached the door first and placed her hand on the panel. It sparked, clicked, then slowly slid open with a long breath of warm air. They stepped inside, the lights flickering weakly. The place smelled of dust and time, but it was dry and quiet. Leary helped Reese to a padded bench and searched the control room. She found a backup generator and placed her glowing fingers on it. With a pulse of light, it came to life. Lights blinked on, Heat flowed through the vents, and the room began to hum. Reese looked around, smiling. This could work. Leary smiled too, tired but proud. It's not perfect. He nodded. But it's home. They explored the small base, finding old supplies, emergency food packs, and even a soft bed hidden in a back room. Leary carried blankets and set them beside the heater. She cleaned dust off the metal shelves and stacked anything useful. In one corner, she placed smooth stones she'd carried in her pocket, each one a memory. One was from the prison floor, sharp and cold. One from the chute, slick with oil. One from the snowy hill where she had faced the hunters. She placed them carefully, as if building something sacred. Reese watched her, eyes soft. What are those? Reminders, she said, of pain, of fear, of what we survived. She added one more stone, smooth and round, and of peace. That night, they lay together under soft blankets, wrapped in warmth that wasn't just heat, but trust. Reese's arm rested around her, his hand over her heart. Leary looked up at him. Do you think they'll come back? He nodded. Eventually. She took a slow breath. Then we'll be ready. He smiled. You sound like a warrior. She smiled back. Maybe I am. The stars outside blinked through a crack in the metal roof. Leary stared at them, her voice quiet. When I was small, before the cages, I used to dream of stars. What did you dream? Reese asked. That they were homes, she said. Tiny lights waiting for someone to come close. He kissed her forehead. Then this place, this moment, it's one of those stars. She held his hand tightly. And you're the one who brought me to it. They fell asleep like that, side by side, hearts close, warmth shared. And for the first time, Leary did not dream of fear. She dreamed of a future, of growing things, of sunlight, of laughter, because now she knew what home felt like. It wasn't stone or metal or fire. It was someone choosing to stay, even when the world was cold. And in that cold galaxy, she had finally found her place. The snow-covered outpost stood still beneath the stars. Warm light flickered from inside, a soft glow in the cold world. Leary sat near the window, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She watched the sky, her eyes wide and calm. Reese sat across from her, fixing a broken scanner with quiet hands. They didn't speak much now, not because there was nothing to say, but because silence had become safe. Suddenly the scanner beeped, and Reese looked up. Ship movement, he said, tapping the screen. A signal just entered orbit. Leary stood, her heart steady. They're coming back. Reese nodded. Not afraid, just focused. Probably more than last time. She looked at the scanner, reading the energy signatures. Big ones. War class. Reese stood beside her, his arm brushing hers. What do you want to do? Leary took a breath, feeling the hum beneath her skin. She was not afraid, not anymore. I'm not going to run, she said. They need to see what I've become. That night, she stood outside the outpost, the snow swirling around her like mist. Her white hair danced in the wind, her eyes glowing brighter than the stars above. Reese stood behind her, armored chest plates scavenged from old parts. He wasn't a soldier, but he had chosen this fight. Above them, the sky lit up with flashing lights, ships breaking through the clouds like steel dragons. Leary raised her hand, palm open, light forming between her fingers. From the ships came a voice, broadcast across the planet. Subject 9, you are ordered to surrender. Leary didn't answer. The voice came again, colder this time. You were not designed to lead. She stepped forward and replied, I wasn't designed to live either, but here I am. A flash of energy burst from her body, soaring into the sky. It hit the lead ship with a blast of light, not enough to destroy, but enough to warn. Inside the command deck of the enemy ship, a general stepped back, whispering, She's more than a weapon now. The soldiers around him hesitated, unsure of what to do next. They expected a weak target, not a girl who glowed like a sun. Back on the ground, Leary turned to Reese, her voice calm. They won't stop unless we make them. Reese took her hand. Then we'll give them a reason to stop. They activated the old outpost defense grid, one system at a time. Turrets hummed, shields buzzed, signals scrambled. Leary reached out with her mind, connecting to forgotten machines, speaking in pulses and waves. The earth beneath the outpost responded to her call, lighting up like veins under the snow. The enemy ships paused, reading the sudden energy surge. They had come for a girl in hiding, but found a force waking from sleep. Some ships turned away, afraid of what they didn't understand. Others stayed, foolish and proud. Leary stood firm as the first beam fired from the sky. She caught it with both hands, bending it like a ribbon of fire. It cracked and scattered into the clouds. Reese stared at her in awe. "You're not just a survivor," he said. "You're a star." She turned to him, eyes full of tears and light. "No, I'm just someone who was broken and chose to rise." And in that moment, the galaxy changed, because somewhere in the deep silence of space, a message began to spread. She lived, she fought, and she chose love over chains. And in every corner of the universe, lost ones began to hope again.